First up is Samuel Huber, founder of Admix. It's a pioneer in in-play monetization. And it's very interesting because it comes on the heels of a lot of news that games are flexing their muscles in media. Most recently, even reading that Riot Games is morphing into kind of a music label. So we know there's a lot of money to be made out there in a lot of creative ways. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Samuel, to tell us how to unlock that value for brands and advertisers.
Thanks a lot, Peggy. Can you see me okay and hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us. Thanks, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about how we're going to unlock the gaming's potential as a media channel, which is a little bit different way to think about games in general. Quick background, if you haven't heard of us. So Admix, we're about 3 years old. We are building the infrastructure to power gaming as a media channel via a new format of advertising that we call InPlay, which are these ads that, as you've seen in the video, that are natively integrated within the gameplay. So more like product placement than traditional advertising. The company, we've raised about $10 million in VC funding so far. We employ about 50 people. We're really in hyper growth at the moment. 2021 has been a very significant inflection point for us. We're expecting to double in size by the end of the year. And we work with a lot of mobile games, about 300 of them, and hundreds of advertisers, really trying to match these two different worlds. So we have a front row seat when it comes to developing gaming as a new advertising channel, and also making sure that we do that always with the user experience at the forefront of the experience. I used to be a game developer myself. I used to have a small hyper casual studio. And the reason why Admix came about was predominantly to create a better user experience for the users. So this is something that we always keep at the forefront of our minds, and that motivates all of our decisions and really defines what we are building. So let's get into it. I wanted to share some insights with you today. So there's been a lot of talk recently about how and why brands should be involved with gaming. You probably have seen this chart before. It's not revolutionary. It basically shows that for specific groups of people, in this case, 13 to 24-year-old in the Western world, gaming is the main part of our media diet. People are gaming more than any other thing they do online. So the attention, the engagement with gaming is second to none. We have 2 billion gamers. It's more than 3 billion forecasted by 2023. You know all of this. The scale of gaming is too big to ignore for brands today. It's this different channel, the same size as Facebook, laying on the side, that they can use to reach their audience in different ways, and that until today they were not really using for that. So very untapped, and a huge potential for brands. And what it means is that gaming is becoming a media channel, not just an activity, but a vehicle for brands to actually reach their audience. And that doesn't mean, intrusive advertising, interstitials, or other type of ads like that. It can be done in a completely different way. So this is the brief intro, right? This is the why brands are now starting to look at gaming. It's harder and harder to reach their audience in traditional channels, and they are paying attention to this new channel, which is highly engaging, more and more popular, and therefore very, very appealing to them. Now, of course, executing this is easier said than done. If you're a game developer, how do you leverage that? How do you leverage the fact that brands are starting to actually put significant money into games? How do you capitalize on that potential that we estimate to be literally in the dozens of billions of dollars within the next couple of years? That is how fast media channel can open, and that is the power of media channels. How do you do that? Well, this is what we are going to discuss today. What are the tools that you can use, you can leverage to unlock this potential, open a new revenue stream for your games, and really start thinking about your games as a media channel, which I know is not the natural reaction, the natural thinking, right? You're building a great game, but you can start shifting your thinking as well that those games are not just an activity for your end users, they can also be a conduit for brands to start to talk to that audience, always in a very respectful, consumer-friendly way. Again, why is it relevant to you? So, you're sitting on a gold mine, right? If you have a game, that game is popular, it has users, that those users are extremely valuable by themselves. They can convert in a purchase. You might already have advertising revenue, but also now you can open a new revenue stream, which involves the brands. Those millions of hours of gameplay, they are undermonetized, sorry. You have a lot of time that is being spent by your users, and this is not always capitalizing on their attention. And that's how we're proposing that InPlay becomes a new revenue stream. It's a new way for you to capitalize on this and to increase your ARPDAU. Now, the idea here is that we're going to use this 20 minutes that we have to make you aware of the tools that exist, of this infrastructure that is being built to make this work, because it is progressing, but it's still pretty nascent. Now, what we call InPlay at Admix, it used to be called InGame, right? So it's not a new concept. It has been a track record of brands being part of games since the early days of gaming, as this example evidence here. And we've seen more and more activation being done over the past couple of years. You've seen all of that. The learnings there is that it's clear that the most successful brand activations are the most native with the games. They're deeply integrated with the gameplay. It's not just an artificial way for brands to be seen inside the game, but they actually contribute to the gameplay, to the avatars. And this is what drives player engagement. A lot of these activations, however, have been custom. They've been one-off. They're generally driven by big publishers, like FIFA, who have a discussion with Burger King and they end up making a deal. And this is a long process that takes 6 months and then ends up being this extremely successful campaign. But that's difficult to scale. It's difficult to scale. And for smaller publishers, indie publishers, they don't necessarily have those relationships with brands or even the ability to execute those kind of campaigns. And so this is what we want to talk about today, is how do we democratize this? How do we enable any publisher and to some extent any brand to meet, to create this new revenue stream, this new business model within the games? Now, what's been really interesting is asking brands and agencies what is their barrier to scale their gaming activity, because it's pretty clear now that everyone knows that gaming is the next media channel. Brands are desperate to get involved with the big games, but now they're looking at casual, hyper casual games as well. How do they target this audience? And so with that much hype, that much excitement, it's natural to ask, why is this not a multi-billion-dollar industry yet? And the responses are pretty clear. It's all about automation. It's all about the lack of tools. It's very difficult for brands today to automate campaigns, so to do one campaign after the other. It's also very difficult for them to measure the success of these in-game campaigns, prove the ROI for every dollar spent inside a game. What do they get in return? Right? It's been very difficult so far. This activation that I've shown you before, there was no mention of ROI. It was just a marketing cost, a PR activation. Now, to take this to the next level, we need to drive actual return investment for the advertisers as well. And also other things around targeting. How are you able to target the right user at the right time in the right game? If you can't do that, then this is difficult to compete against channel like Facebook or even Google, where you can do that. So we need to make gaming competitive as a channel to develop this and to unlock that huge revenue stream for the publishers. All of that means that it's costly to activate because those activations are still not automated and have to be done kind of on a one-off basis. So to simplify, the reason why what's limiting the advertisers, the brands, and the agencies today to really put billions of dollars into games as advertising or sponsorship is a lack of infrastructure. A lack of infrastructure that would make it scalable, measurable, and profitable for them as well. So this is what we are defining. We need to define this infrastructure to turn gaming into a true media channel. And that's obviously what Admix has been focused on for the last couple of years now. And if we unpack that, we believe that there are 4 components of that infrastructure that needs to be in place to unlock this scalable potential of gaming as a media channel. Now, what's really important here is to remember is that it needs to work for the 3 parties that are involved. The first party is the users. This is the most important. We need to maintain the user experience, right? We will never compromise, more revenue against a worse user experience. This is not what InPlay is about. The user experience always comes first. Then the publishers. We need to make sure that the publisher gets the revenue that they expect. It doesn't affect the retention of the game, and that the core metrics are still, as they were before. Advertising InPlay should be just an add-on. It shouldn't compromise anything. And then the advertisers, exactly what we are seeing on this screen. We need to make sure it works for them. For them to invest a lot of money into the channel, they need somehow to find a return on investment. They need to make sure it's easy to integrate. Otherwise, they will default to other channels. So by knowing these 3 things that we need to maintain, let's dive into what are the 4 components that are needed for that infrastructure to work to develop gaming as a media channel. So the first one is the obvious one. It's about having an in-play experience. So in-play is, or you can call it in-game, it's the native insertion of ad content inside the gameplay, not on top of the game, inside the game. Now, this is a new thing, but if you think about it, it's also been happening like that for every other media channel. Every media channel has built ad units that are native to their environment, right? Google AdWords, the results of the AdWords are kind of blended within the organic results. They're on top, but every year Google changes it a little bit so it looks like it's native. Facebook feed, the ads used to be on the right-hand side, and now the Facebook ads are within the feed itself. It's more native. You scroll past and you see those ads as well. This is what is needed to drive true engagement. Players, users, they do not want to be interrupted. They want to consume the branded experience as part of the core experience, which is here the gameplay. And this is why for gaming, we need a model where the branded content is also natively integrated with the gameplay. It's a no-brainer. This is what is needed for gaming to scale as a true media channel. Brands are not going to be interested with ads that interrupt the users. It's a terrible way to create a great brand experience. If you play a game and you're interrupted by a brand, what is your feeling going to be towards that brand? It's not going to be positive. You're not in the frame of mind to buy something right now. But if the brand that you like is sponsoring a relevant experience, like a car brand sponsoring a racing game, or seeing a skin of one of your favorite brand on your avatar, that's a completely different frame of mind, and it's looked at more as a sponsorship than advertising, and therefore the affinity with the brand will be a lot higher. So the more native, the more integrated, the better. This is what's needed to scale gaming as a media channel as a absolute necessity. We need to have an in-play experience. And that's obviously an infrastructure that we at Admix have been pioneering for the last couple of years. Now, there's another thing that is needed, and it's real-time ad delivery. So you might think, okay, this is important for advertisers. Why is it important for me as a publisher? Well, again, we need to deliver value for everyone in the marketplace here. The advertisers need to target the right user at the right time in the right game based on things like their location or maybe their gameplay behavior, right? Advertisers do that on every other platform. They do that on the web. They do that on social media. They're starting to do that on TV even. So why not gaming? Gaming provides the data that enables advertisers to target against those customer insights. And some of this data is unique to games, unique to the gameplay behavior, which is very, very powerful. And if you make that available, and it can be totally anonymous, by the way, it's more of a contextual data, then again, you provide value to the advertisers and you enable them suddenly to have access to exactly the right audience at the right time. And this is what is going to be needed for them to scale their spend and generate more revenue for the publishers. So for gaming to scale as a media channel, the ad delivery needs to be real time. It needs to be data driven. A complete takeover, a sponsorship negotiated in advance, again, those things are great, but they're not going to contribute to scaling this as a media channel. Now, the third point is the availability of the inventory. Again, that sounds very much advertiser driven, but we need to provide value for the other side as well in order to make this marketplace dynamics work, right? If the inventory, which is the areas inside your games, if it's very difficult to buy, if they can't find it anywhere, if they have to come to the Admix platform only, for example, to buy it, this is going to create a lot of friction. We want to make those games available everywhere so that any buyer can eventually have access to it if they satisfy certain criteria. So we want gaming to be aligned with the other type of publishers out there, so that if you're an advertiser and you use the Google platform to book your campaigns, or if you're a big agency and you have also a contract with the Trade Desk, for example, you need to be able to find the InPlay inventory within those platforms. You need to be able to, without creating specific advert sizes and formats, you need to be able to reuse formats that you've already used to minimize creative cost. All of this might sound like a detail, but it's actually very important. There is an incredible amount of friction that is involved, and advertisers would default to what is easiest. So if you can't use the same ad format, then it's very likely that they will not create specific ad formats for the channel, at least initially. So we need to be very mindful of that, and we need to support existing standards to be able to remove all the barriers to entry and make it easy for brands to tap into gaming as a channel. This will create more liquidity in the marketplace. It would make sure that this in-game media actually gets traded, not just talked about. And that's a huge challenge, of course, because games are, app in native environments that are not necessarily compatible with those big ad trading platforms. And again, this is a compatibility layer that solutions like ours are providing. And the last thing that is important for the advertisers are measurement. And again, this is all about return on investment. If we're creating here a media channel, and we aim to have millions and millions of dollars in ad spend. So we need to be able to tell the advertisers where is this spend going. They need to be able to measure success and ROI. And there are many ways to do this. You can simply measure the viewability of the ad, how prominent it is in the field of view, how big it is compared to the size of the screen. Or it could be the engagement, taking an action within the ad unit. There's plenty of ways to measure performance. It doesn't necessarily mean clicking. That's the conception that is actually wrong. There's many ways for advertisers to measure the performance of the channel. And it's also about brand safety. There are games that are great games that may be too violent for a specific type of brand, but that other brands would be very happy to embrace, right? Brands have different affinities with those kind of things. And so being able to classify the games, being able to point the right game to the right advertiser so that it works for the brand, but also the publisher. They might not want to see every advertiser in their games. Providing those kind of controls is going to be key to scale that marketplace. And again, embrace the growth of gaming as a media channel. So these are the four things that we see are really, really important. The core pieces of infrastructure that are needed to unlock the potential of gaming as a media channel. And while we're transitioning from pure custom one-off activation to a more predictable, trackable channel, we are obviously, it's an infrastructure that we have been building for a few years now, and we call it InPlay. It is real time, it is data driven, it is all the things that we've discussed before. We're also fully measured by third-party verification vendors when it comes to viewability. So it creates a lot of credibility with advertisers because they can see that it's not just us saying this is viewable, it's a brand that they're actually trusting. And I think what's really exciting is we are really at the birth of a new channel. If you look back at the evolution of the web 20 years ago, the market really started to take off when scalable infrastructure made it easy for the advertisers and the publisher to trade media. And that's where it became a lot easier for publishers to have a business because they knew they could monetize, and they knew that by adding a tag on their website, it was a lot easier to make money than having to deal directly with the brand one campaign at a time. And so the opportunities for brands, but also for publishers, really exploded when that infrastructure became available. And I believe that 20 years later, this is where we are when it comes to gaming. We're now starting to see tools, Admix being one of them, to enable brands to tap into that potential and unlock extra revenue for the publishers. And only with the right tools, with the right infrastructure, will we be able to actually scale this. And if the previous media channel is any indication, it's pretty clear that the early adopters on both sides will be able to reap the benefits of the channel. And it's actually already working. We have some great case studies. I'm just going to run through quickly to show the benefits of this new channel. So we have one here with InPlay. They basically were trying to prove that InPlay ads integrated inside the gameplay do not affect user retention at all. And that's the holy grail, right? It enables you to scale without the risk of driving users away. With interstitial, we know that the maximum value comes around 7 or 8 impressions per user per day. It depends on the game, of course, but that's the average that IronSource reported on. And after that, you start churning users faster than you make revenue. So the growth is capped. You need to make sure that you're very specific about when you want to interrupt users. With InPlay, it's totally different. The mechanics are completely different because the adverts do not interrupt the experience. So if you create them in a way that is respectful to the users, of course, you don't want to plaster the experience with ads, but if you do it in a nice way, like InPlay has done, they've tested 5 ads, 10 ads, and also a control sample of 0 ads. And the retention day 1, day 7, day 28 was the same. There's no effect in user retention as you would expect because you are not interrupting the experience. So that's the first thing. And these are more examples here. A significant increase in LTV. You can place more ads in front of the users. You maximize the number of impressions per session. Your AppDo or your App TV increases as such. And if you have a wide open world, you can actually place, sometimes 20, 30 ads per session, which competes with, 3 or 4 interstitials. And the mechanics become very interesting when you see that on top of that, you keep your users longer and you have better store reviews because you're not interrupting the experience with ads. So really interesting mechanics there. Some other studios have also used in-game as a mitigation factor for iOS 14 because we rely on brand revenue, not performance revenue. There was, of course, a lot of speculation about how the CPMs were going to evolve after iOS 14 would come into full effect. And we do not rely on the IDFA as much as performance channel. Performance channel rely on the IDFA for attribution. We rely on the IDFA for retargeting if the brand wants to. So it's by no means something that is absolutely necessary. And so our CPM has actually seen absolutely no drop following iOS 14. And so bringing in addition from your performance revenue, bringing a brand revenue stream makes sense as a way to diversify different revenue streams. And again, all I'm saying here is not to replace your existing stack with InPlay. These are completely complementary business models. One would interrupt the users. You can monetize those interruptions. The other one is monetizing the gameplay itself. So you can totally run the two in parallel and get incremental revenue at absolutely no cost. And what's really exciting to see is that this is not only limited to sport or racing or the type of games that you would expect. We've seen Developers like Pixel, for example, pioneering InPlay in a puzzle game, which we didn't even think, that would be possible and make sense. But because InPlay are tools, it's a developer tool. You decide how you want to integrate this placement inside your game. You can place one ad on the menu screen, or you can place 10 ads everywhere. You decide. It is a tool for you to build and craft your advertising experience. We're seeing really cool activations into genre like puzzle games that we didn't think was possible. And so that gives us, and we've seen actually another one in many in hyper casual as well. So InPlay works everywhere. It's not limited to a specific genre. It is really down to your creativity and your willingness to adopt a new format. Right, so we're almost out of time. So in summary, if there's one or two things that you should remember out of today, is that gaming is evolving into a new media channel. And that is the way that brands are starting to think about it. And this is a good thing, right? Media sometimes has negative connotations to it, but this is a good thing. It means new revenue stream. InPlay is the infrastructure to power this. It has to be native. It has to be respectful of the player. There's no doubt about that. And it provides a new revenue stream that you can unlock. It doesn't cannibalize anything, retention, player spend, not at all. It's totally on top. The money now comes from advertisers willing to leverage your audience to reach their audience, their own audience. And if you do that in a way that is respectful, if you use the controls that we provide, you can actually generate significant revenue uplift using that solution. And it enables you to monetize every moment. That's how you should think about InPlay, because it's native, it doesn't interrupt the experience. You can now monetize 100% of the gameplay of your users. And this is extremely valuable eyeballs that you're now able to actually monetize. That's it. That's all I had to talk to you about today. Would love to answer any question if you have any.
Oh, and we have a lot of questions, Samuel. We've got a lot of people very excited about what you're talking about here. So I will just kick it off.
Perfect.
People have a feeling that there is a lot of opportunity here. So question from someone who's anonymous, because maybe they want to get in on it. How would a game decide what will be the best way to incorporate ads into their game?
Good question. So the way that you integrate is via a plugin, which is kind of SDK, but a lot simpler. There's no code. It's literally you integrate that with Unity, and then you drag and drop those placements, and then those placements get replaced by ads on the runtime based on the user, as we say, real-time delivery. Now, in terms of the actual areas where to place it, so basically it's a lot of logic, right? It's where are these ads going to be the most seen, because the more viewable they are, the more the advertisers would be willing to actually put money on it. And so for this, we can recommend areas. Sometimes you would know best based on your games. And we're starting to use data as well, gameplay data, almost to create a heat map of players' attention and then advise on the best possible position. So it's a combination of help, logic and data.
Okay. Another question, very interesting one, because this is pretty hot. Is there a way to incorporate audio ads or other styles of advertising into your game?
So at the moment, the formats that we have are static. So they would be banners. They can be animated. We do have videos as well, which have 3D audio. So the closer to the video you are, the louder it becomes. So it also can attract your attention as well. And the publisher can set up all of that. At the moment, we do not have purely audio formats, but this is certainly on the roadmap. Like what we build at Admix is the infrastructure to power this, right? Data-driven delivery, a buying platform for advertisers, the SDK that is optimized and doesn't affect the performance of the game. That's what we're building. The types of formats, in the future, we are going to start supporting a lot more formats, including 3D and others. So we're not limited by any type of format. Excellent.
Another question, who wants to know about the engagement and how that plays out? So your in-game, your in-play experience, what about click-through? Is it purely visual advertising, or is there a way for users to interact with the ads as well?
at the moment it's purely branding, purely kind of passive. But we know how important it is for the advertisers mainly to drive engagement. And so we are currently researching what is the best type of engagement to make that to make happen in game. You know, is it a click that takes you out of the experience? That's pretty intrusive. There might be a better way to interact with the brand without maybe totally going to another page. So this is the next chapter where we actually start looking into more engagement, direct response, eventually shoppable items. This is all on the roadmap. At the moment, it's very much of a passive experience.
Well, you said it's the birth of a new media, and that's where we start. We start with billboards in a way, and you know, with a lot of display. Someone wants to understand a little bit more about the real-time aspect here, Samuel. So they want to understand, how can you ensure that ads are truly aligned with the brand experience and don't potentially show something undesirable or irrelevant to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have our own ad quality solution that basically takes care of that, and it's made of separate components. The first one is that we only work with advertiser partners that are premium. You know, so we work with Google, we work with the Trade Desk. We kind of plug into those big platforms who, on their side, already make a lot of checks to make sure that, you know, there's no explicit ads or undesirable ads, let's say. On top of that, we apply filters with specific categories. So advertisers label their ads with standard IAB categories. We can block categories that we do not want. So we are actually blocking probably more than we should. We're blocking, obviously, gambling, adult. We're blocking pharmaceutical. We're blocking political, to make sure that none of that ever appears inside the games. And then from our dashboard, the publisher can actually whitelist, blacklist specific type of advertisers. And we are adding even more controls for them to be able to do that, so that they will be able to approve down to the creative, the ad itself, before it gets served into the platform. So at the moment, it's a lot of filtering, and we're adding even more of that to give the publisher complete confidence about what is being served into their experience.
Well, speaking of more, Sam, there are more questions, but we're running out of time. So I think you're going to have to join the discussion on Discord, because there are quite a few. Some people want to understand how this works with VR games. So everyone, we couldn't answer all your questions, but Sam's going to be around, aren't you, Sam?
I'm going to absolutely hang out on Discord and be happy to answer any of the questions. Yeah.
Excellent. And it's a very exciting topic. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Peggy. Thanks, everyone, for having me.